Hello and welcome to Courtesy Cottage Crafts Rope Bowl tutorial. In this video, we will show you the process of making your very own rope bowl using our Courtesy Cottage Crafts rope bowl kits. Although your kit may have a different colour or pattern or fabric than ours, your bowl will be roughly the same size and shape when we're done. Before we begin sewing the bowl, we have a bit of setup to do. Let's start by making sure we have everything we need. Your rope bowl kit includes 9 meters or 30 feet of 5.5mm polycore rope, a snap-on piping foot attachment, a 10 centimeter by 10 centimeter or 4-inch square piece of fabric to cover the base of the bowl, approximately 7 meters or 20 feet of pre-cut fabric strips for piping your rope, a heavy-duty sewing needle, a stick of glue, and about 1,000 meters of thread and an empty bobbin. Your kit does not include a sewing machine capable of both zigzag and straight stitch, a pair of sharp scissors, preferably fabric scissors but any sharp pair will do, and a standard sewing machine foot or zigzag foot if you have it. Now we have everything we need, let's set up the sewing machine. I'll be using my late model Brother sewing and quilting machine. If your machine or settings don't look the same as mine, you may have a different threading or bobbin loading layout. Just refer to the instructions that came with your particular sewing machine. Since the bowl rope is quite thick and has a poly core, we're going to be using a heavy-duty sewing needle throughout this tutorial. The sewing machine needle in your kit has a wax safety cover. Don't forget to remove the wax over the point of your needle before you start sewing. Make sure you have a standard or zigzag foot attached and are using the thread enclosed with your kit. Wind on and load the bobbin according to your sewing machine instructions. Now thread your machine and needle and adjust the tension settings. Bowl making normally needs a higher tension setting than you would ordinarily use for straight stitching on cotton. We use a setting between 6 and 7 depending on the fabric. For the cotton fabric in this kit, we're using a 6 tension setting. Since my machine's maximum setting is 10, this means I'm using about 60% of the available tension. Set your machine to sew a zigzag stitch. I start with a 3mm stitch length and a 5.5mm stitch width. Once you've finished this setup, we're ready to start making a bowl. The first task is to prepare the rope and begin forming the base of the bowl. Start by picking one end of your rope to be your base and just go ahead and drop the rest of the coil to the floor so it's out of the way. Woven rope tends to fray, so we're going to cut the end so we have a cleaner edge. Once you've done that, we're going to pull back the cotton weaving to expose the nylon core. Now cut about 1 centimeter or ½ inch off the nylon core, so when you pull the cotton weaving back into place, it goes past the end of the poly core. Take the rope end we've just prepared. We're going to begin forming a tight spiral. The spiral doesn't have to be very big, 4 centimeters or about 1.5 inches is fine. We're going to widen the base later. It's essential that your rope looks like a number 9, or you're going to run into serious difficulties in later steps. The trailing rope should be on the right. Once you have your spiral ready, we're going to move to the machine, and it's the perfect time to double check your machine to set it to zigzag stitch. Start in the middle of your coil and sew backwards to the end of your spiral before letting the machine move forwards. So back and forth until you have made at least 2 passes over your rope, making sure to end in the middle. Lift the foot of your machine and turn your coil 90 degrees clockwise before dropping the foot back down and repeating that back and forth motion. When you're done, there should be a plus sign going right across your starting spiral. The spiral should hold its shape well. Go ahead and remove your number 9 from the machine and cut off any excess threads so they don't get in the way later. Do not cut the spare end of the rope, only the loose threads. Now that we have our starting spiral ready, we can begin to build out the base. Starting about 3 centimeters or 1 inch back from the last place we stopped stitching, we're going to sew our coil to the trailing rope beside it. Place your spiral under the machine foot so the valley between the ropes is centered. Hopefully your machine's foot has a little mark like mine does. Centering over the gap ensures the zigzag stitch hits both sides of rope equally and secures them. As you begin, let the dogs of your machine grip the rope. Resist the urge to pull unless absolutely necessary as you sew. It can feel a bit crowded when you begin. You may need to sew a couple of centimeters, then lift the foot and turn your rope coil. Drop the foot and do another little bit. Don't worry if you keep having to do that for the first few laps. It will get easier as you go. We're just going to go round and round, building the diameter of the base till it gets to about 9 centimeters or 3.5 inches. Keep checking that your base does not exceed the size of your fabric square. Check to be sure you have around approximately a centimeter or quarter of an inch from the edges of your square. Your coil needs to fit inside the fabric square and have a little bit of fabric showing all the way around. If you go too far, don't worry, you can always unpick it. Just be sure to remove the stray threads so you don't sew them into the bowl later. Once your base spiral is ready, we can attach the fabric square to it. Turn your fabric over so right side is down and make sure your spiral still looks like a number 9. Grab your glue stick and apply a liberal amount to the spiral, making sure to cover up to the edge of the circle. Place the glue side of your coil base onto the back of the fabric. Flip it over and work the fabric into the glue. Now we need to cut off the excess fabric. Find the place where your stitching ends and the rope tail begins. You're going to make a snip straight across the fabric to the edge of the base coil. Now, leaving a small 1 centimeter or quarter inch border of fabric carefully cut all the way around. You should be left with a coil looking like a number 9 again and covered in fabric, right sides up, with the tail of rope on the right. Now that our base is done, we need to get ready to start piping. First, let's prepare the sewing machine to pipe fabric. Make sure you adjust the setting to a straight stitch and that you have installed the snap-on piping foot included with your kit. At this point, I also set my stitch length to about 3 millimeters. Now that your machine is ready, let's begin piping. Place your strips of fabric somewhere close at hand. I like to set mine to the side of my machine. Take your rope and make one loop around the base. We aren't sewing yet, but getting a measure of where we will need to start piping. The point where your rope completes one loop of white around the base is the spot where we will begin. Take one of your strips of fabric, dab a little bit of glue on the wrong side at one end. This is just to hold the fabric in place as you position the rope. Center your fabric around the rope at the point where your white loop ends. The raw edges of fabric should be towards the center of the base. The glue will help tack it in place. I use a clip here just to hold it all together, but this isn't absolutely necessary. Now we can move back to the sewing machine. There are 2 grooves in the piping foot. Doesn't really matter which side you use. I'm right-handed and prefer having my rope seated in the left groove. Whichever side feels more comfortable to you, just be sure that the raw edges are in the center and both sides of the fabric are under the needle, right sides out. Do a couple of back and forth stitches to secure your thread, then begin sewing down the rope. Make sure you keep the rope tightly tucked into the fabric and smoothing it as you go. Again, let the dogs do the work and resist the urge to pull unless absolutely necessary. It should feed its way through. When you're about 8 centimeters or 3 inches from the end of your current fabric strip, grab the next piece. Fold it long ways, right sides out, and lay it inside the end of the previous strip with the rope laying across the crease. Make sure your fabric strip is centered and secure before sewing it down. Your goal is to create a smooth transition from one piece to the next. Just keep repeating this process until you run out of fabric strips. When you get to the last strip, make sure to reverse your machine a few stitches and secure the final piece in place. There's going to be some unpiped rope left when you've sewn all the strips. Don't worry, we're going to use that extra rope to finish your bowl, so don't cut it off. Once you've finished sewing the piping, it's time to remove the excess fabric. Taking your scissors and starting from the end we just finished sewing, we're going to cut as close to the sewing line as we can without cutting into it. This will be about 8 millimeters or 1/16 of an inch. This part can feel a bit intense. Don't stress about getting everything perfectly even. This process is quite forgiving and all your raw edges are going to be sewn down inside your bowl. Relax, put on some music, take your time, go slow and steady. Now that the piping and cutting are behind us, it's time to get to the exciting bit. For me, this is where the magic happens. We're going to start building the sides of the bowl. First things first, let's reset our sewing machine. Remove the piping foot and put the standard or zigzag foot back on. We have to move the machine settings back to zigzag stitch, but this time we're setting the stitch length to 4 millimeters and the width to 6. For beginners, I recommend the widest stitch your machine supports. So as you move over to the machine, you should have the base coil, again looking like the number 9 with the unstitched rope on the right. Your base fabric is trimmed and right side up on top of the coil. Our first task is to sew the white rope around the base coil. Place the base under the foot, centered over the transition point where the base fabric ends and the white rope begins. Do a few back and forth stitches to secure the thread. Now, while holding the base flat to the surface of your sewing machine deck, tuck the raw edge of the base fabric down the inside edge of your coil and secure the fabric into place with the unpiped rope. You may need to pause and adjust to make sure the fabric is smooth and the valley between the rope is centered underneath the foot. Let the machine dogs do the work again and keep everything nice and flat while you sew. When you've gone all the way round and are at the point where the piped rope begins, do a couple of stitches in place. Do not remove the base from under your sewing machine foot or lift the needle. Time for the magic to begin. Keeping your base under the machine and the needle down, use your left hand to raise the base of your bowl at approximately a 30-degree angle. Now push the piped rope against the base with the raw edge tucked over the previous circle of rope. Use the line of straight stitching on the piped fabric as your center point. You want the zigzag stitch to evenly straddle that line of stitches. We're going to sew one whole lap around at this angle. Your goal is to keep the angle consistent. Don't panic, bowls are forgiving. Use your right hand to hold the free tail of rope pushed tightly against the sewn portion of the bowl. Keep stopping to adjust if you need to. Once you've completed a whole lap at the 30-degree angle and are back where you started, you're going to hold the base up as straight as your sewing machine allows. Let the base of the bowl butt up against your machine. This will really help keep the angle consistent while you build the sides. We are just going to be going round and round to build the sides of the bowl. Keep the bowl butted to your machine as straight as it will go as you tuck the raw edges of your piped rope smoothly over the previous row. You may have to stop to untwist the rope and ensure it's laying flat. Don't forget to keep tucking those loose rope tightly against the previous row as you sew. Once you've done a couple of laps, you should start to really get an idea how the sides build. What started as an unpromising coaster should begin to resemble a bowl. Like I said, it's magic. Let's hope by now you've come to the end of your piped rope and are beginning to wonder what to do next. Well, we're going to show you the finishing loop that has been used in traditional North American rope bowl making. The loops were used so bowls could be hung on wooden pegs in cabins and homesteads. Firstly, as your piped fabric rope ends, we are going to sew almost, and I stress almost, one revolution of plain white rope to create a decorative lip around the bowl. You'll need to pause your sewing about 5 centimeters or 2.5 inches before you complete the whole lap. Stop sewing with your foot and needle down. You should have about a foot of plain white rope left. Estimate about 20 centimeters or 8 inches from your needle and cut the remaining rope off. Just like when we started the bowl, we're going to pull back the cotton weave to expose the nylon core and snip off 2 to 3 centimeters or about an inch of that core. Pull the outside of your rope back a little further and cut the poly core at a 30 or 45-degree angle to create a tapered end. Pull the cotton weave back over the poly core and trim it to the same 30 or 40-degree angle. You can use your glue stick to paint the end and tack it into shape as you create the tapered end. Now, tuck the tapered end of your rope between the rim and the unsewn rope to create a loop. Continue your zigzag stitch until you reach the point where the piping ends, then sew backwards and forwards to firmly secure the loop into the body of the bowl. Go up and down each side of the attachment site to ensure the loop is well secured. Now you can remove your finished bowl and snip off any loose threads. With that, we're finished. You did it! Congratulations on completing your bowl. We hope you had a good time crafting and creating with us. If you enjoyed sewing along with us, please let us know and be sure to send photos of your finished bowls so we can share them on Facebook and Instagram. If you have any questions or need some troubleshooting, don't hesitate to reach out through our social media or email courtesycottagecrafts@gmail.com. Of course, you can always find our bowls, jars and other craft items at the Courtesy Cottage Crafts Etsy shop. Thank you again for joining Emily and I. We look forward to seeing you at markets and trade shows and other seasonal events. Please stop by and say hello and share your crafty journey.